There is a time in a farm succession plan that does not always show up on the balance sheet. It is the time a son or daughter gets married. It is the time a spouse moves into the farmhouse. It is the time a new family member realizes that marrying into the farm does not just mean marrying someone. It means marrying into a farm schedule, a history, a way of doing things, a business, a family culture, a yard where people may stop by without calling. A house that used to belong to grandma and grandpa, a shop where meetings are held at the drop of a hat and decisions are made before supper, and sometimes a whole set of expectations that nobody has ever actually explained. Today on the Pathfinder Legacy Podcast, we are moving into Deck 3, the in-law bridge, because succession does not just affect mom, dad, and the successor. It affects spouses. It affects marriages. It affects children. It affects privacy. It affects holidays. It affects who feels welcome, who feels judged, who feels invisible, and who feels like they are always being watched. And here's the truth. If the successor's marriage is strained, the succession plan is strained too. Welcome back to the Pathfinder Legacy Podcast. Today, we are moving into Deck 3 of the Pathfinder Legacy conversation card game called the In-Law Bridge. And I will be honest with you, this is one of the most important decks in the whole entire game because farm succession is not only about land, equipment, cattle, crops, retirement dates, lease agreements, and operating decisions. It is also about people. It is about the son or daughter who wants to come home. It is about their spouse who is trying to figure out where they fit into all of this. It is about the parents who built the operation and may be afraid of losing influence on their child. It is about the grandparents who still see the house as ours. It is about siblings who may or may not be involved. It is about the children growing up in the middle of the transition. And it is about one question families often forget to ask. What does it feel like to marry into this operation? All right, before we get into today's episode, a quick reminder, this podcast is educational and practical. It is not legal, tax, financial, or counseling advice, and every family is different. Bring in the right advisors, professionals, attorneys, counselors, or facilitators when you need them. And if you want the Pathfinder Legacy conversation card game, or if you want help using it with your family or your clients, reach out to me at pathfinderlegacy.com. You can call, email, or text me. All right, let's jump in and talk about the in-law bridge. A lot of succession plans focus on the main players, mom, dad, and their direct children, the successor, the siblings, and the assets and the estate plan. But there is often someone standing just outside the formal conversation who is deeply affected by every decision, the successor's spouse. That spouse may not own the land. They may not sign the operating note. They may not be in the shop every morning for those business meetings. They may not be named in the succession plan, but they are living with the stress. They are hearing the late night conversations. They're watching their spouse carry pressures. They're raising children around the farm schedule. They're adjusting to holidays, vacations, meals, school events, family time. And they may be doing the bookkeeping, meals, childcare, emotional support, or unpaid work that nobody sees. And if they do not feel respected, welcomed, protected, or informed, resentment begins to build. The in-law factor can strengthen a family operation, or it can become one of the biggest sources of tension. That is why I call this deck the in-law bridge, because a bridge connects two sides. It does not erase differences. It does not pretend everyone sees things the same way. It does not force instant closeness, but it creates a safe crossing. And in family succession, we need safe crossings. I have lived a piece of this myself. My husband and I have dealt with the sacrifices and strain that can come with living close to the older generation in a family farm. Our daughters are the fifth generation to live in the house and have a hand in the farming operation. And that is something that, we are definitely proud of, but it did not come without its own challenges. We moved to a small town to raise them on the farm, teach them work ethic, and teach them how to give back to their community. We made many sacrifices. We worked hard. We worked an off-farm job for many years to provide and support what we were building. And part of what we had to navigate was the fact that the house we lived in had been seen by others as Grandma and Grandpa's house. So in their minds, it was still a familiar place. It was still part of the family history. It was still a place they had always just knocked and walked into. But for us, it was our home. And those are two different things. When someone knocks once and walks in, that may feel normal to them. But to the young family living there, it can feel like there is absolutely no privacy. When someone comes into the basement and sits for hours without really thinking about your space, they may not be trying to be disrespectful, but it's a real impact on your family. And sometimes that is the hardest part. People may not intend harm, but if nobody talks about boundaries, people still get hurt. That is why this deck is important, because farm families have to learn how to say, we care for you, we respect the past, we honor what this house means to the family history. We also need privacy, boundaries, and room to build our own household. That's not disrespect. That is how the next generation survives. All right, so the cards I'm talking about with the in-law bridge, they are, if you're following along on YouTube or you're streaming, you can see that they're a lighter blue color, and I'm going to go through about 7 different cards today. So the first one is, welcome to the story. What does being welcomed look like in this family? And a prompt note says, plainly, say it plainly, no hints. This is a great opening card because it does not start with conflict. It starts with welcome. And I think families need to ask the question more often, what does welcome actually look like? Because one family may think welcome means, come on over anytime, help yourself, you're one of us now. We do everything together, we're family. But the in-law or spouse may hear, I have no privacy, I cannot say no, I am expected to fit in without knowing the rules. I am being watched all the time. Another family may be more private or reserved. They may not ask many questions. They may think they are giving space, but the new family member may feel they do not like me. They do not include me. I am not really part of this family. That is why we cannot just assume welcome. We have to define it. So here's an example. A successor gets married and the spouse moves to the farm. The family thinks they are being welcoming because they include the couple in every Sunday dinner, all of the holidays, every quick stop at the house, every business conversation, every farm emergency. But the spouse is completely overwhelmed. They're trying to build a marriage, create a home, maybe raise a family, maybe work an off-farm job, maybe learn their way through a new community, and also understand the farm family's culture. What they need may not be more invitations. They may need permission to have space. So here's a script that I would use with the senior generation for them to say in a family meeting. We are glad you are part of this family. We do not want to assume what makes you feel welcome. They ask the question, what helps you feel included and what feels like too much? The successor spouse script would read something similar to, I want to be part of the family and I appreciate being included. I also need some space for our household and our family to build our own routines. Can we talk about what that looks like? And here's a script the successor can say, I want my spouse to feel welcome here, but I also need to protect our marriage and our home and our family. Let's talk about what healthy inclusion looks like. So this card is simple, but it is very powerful because when welcome is not defined, families can confuse closeness with pressure. All right. The second card is Unwritten Rules Decoder. So the front prompt reads, what are the unwritten rules of this family? Which are helpful, which are heavy? And then a booster note is name them without blaming. We're not pointing the finger at anyone. Every farm family has unwritten rules. You may not have them posted on the fridge, but everyone knows they exist. So these rules I'm talking about are like, we don't talk about money. We don't question dad. Dad's always right. He knows it. We can never question him. We don't take vacations during the busy seasons. We don't even leave the operation during the busy seasons. We don't say no when family asks for help. We don't talk about conflict directly. Nope, we just pick up the carpet and brush it underneath. We show up whether we are exhausted or not. We keep doing things the way they have always been done. We don't bring up estate planning because, that's a dirty word and it sounds greedy. We don't talk about retirement because it makes people uncomfortable. And when an in-law marries in, they often do not get an operating handbook. They just get corrected when they break a rule they did not know existed. That creates a lot of tension because the family may think, what's wrong with them? They should just know. But they do not know. They did not grow up in that family system. They did not learn the silent expectations. They may come from a family that communicated completely different, that took vacations differently, that argued differently, or handled money differently, or set boundaries. And that difference is not automatically disrespect. It's just different. And families need to remember that it's okay. You're not going to be the same from one family to the next. So here's an example. A successor spouse wants to attend a family wedding, take the kids to a weekend event, or go on a short vacation. But in the farm family, there's an unwritten rule. You do not leave during the summer season. Nobody says it directly, but the body language and the looks say it all. The side comments say it. The silence treatment says it. So the spouse starts feeling guilty for wanting normal family time. And the successor feels right in the middle, wanting to honor the farm business, but also wanting to honor their marriage, their family, their kids that they've been building together. So this is where resentment starts. And here's a script that I would say with clients. I think we may have some unwritten rules that are creating pressure. We need to call out those rules and talk about them. We're not pointing the finger or blaming anybody, so we can decide which ones work and which ones are out of date. And here's a script that could be said from the in-law or spouse side. I'm trying to understand how this family operates. If there are expectations around holidays or the summer season, privacy, or helping out, I'd rather talk about them directly than guess and people be upset that I did it wrong. And in the senior generation, a script that they could say, we probably have habits we do not even realize are habits. Let's talk about what expectations we have so we do not put unknown pressure on you, the next generation. The goal is not to throw away every family tradition that they've had going for the last 100 years. The goal is to separate traditions that strengthen the family from unspoken rules that exhaust people. All right, so the next card is farm time versus family time. And the front prompt reads, how do we protect a couple and family time during peak seasons without guilt? And a prompt or backside boost would be boundaries prevent burnout. This card is important because farm time will swallow up family time if nobody protects it. And I know this personally. When you live on or near the farm, the work is always there. You wake up and it's right outside your front door. You never get away from it. And the older generation may be only a quarter of a mile away. The shop is there in your yard. The livestock is there in your yard. The phone rings. The weather is constantly being talked about. And there's a lot of guilt there. And if you're the successor, you may feel like you could never leave your job. You go to a school event and wonder if someone thinks you are not dedicated. You go to a 4-H event and wonder if you are going to hear about it later. You need to get your priorities straight. You attend a wedding and feel guilty the whole entire time. You take one day away and come home to comments about what did not get done because you had to leave. That wears on you and your own family. It also teaches children that the farm always comes first, even before them. Now, I'm not saying farm families can live by a perfect 9-to-5 schedule. I know it's not perfect, but that's not reality. But what I am saying that if there is never protected time set aside for you and your family and your children, The succession plan is borrowing from the relationship account until it absolutely goes bankrupt. So here's an example. A young farm couple has kids in school, kids in 4-H or other extracurricular activities, and maybe one spouse is working off the farm. The successor is trying to prove themselves to the older generation. So what happens? They never say no. They miss birthdays. They miss a lot of family meals together. They miss all of those little activities that might seem like little, but because they're out working, because they can't tell the older generation no without being made to feel guilty. So, and then everyone wonders why the spouse is frustrated or upset and the successor is upset. So nobody's against the farm. They're just against feeling like the family has no room to breathe. So here's a script that I would use from the successor to the senior generation. The successor would say, I'm committed to the farm, but I also need to protect my marriage and my family. Can we talk about what family time looks like during the summer season so it does not feel like I'm choosing one or the other? And here's a script the spouse could say to the successor. I know the farm is important and I support the family business, but I need us to make intentional time for our family too. I do not want to feel like I'm always competing with the farming business. And here's a script that the senior generation could use. I know we grew up doing it one way, but I do not want the next generation to burn out. Let's talk about what reasonable family time looks like, even in the summer season. So healthy families do not protect time because they are lazy. You need a break. They protect time because family matters and you need to have time away from your job. Okay, the next card is information access equals trust. So the front prompt states, what business information should spouses have access to so they feel secure? And then a backer boost note would be secrecy creates stories. This is one of the most practical cards in the deck because the spouse may not need to know every single detail of the operation, but they do need to know enough information to feel financially safe and secure. If the successor is carrying all the debt, risk, mortgage payments, equipment payments, and all of the uncertainty, delayed compensation, etc., that affects the farming operation and it affects the household. And if the spouse is left in the dark, they're going to fill in the blanks. That's just human nature. So secrecy creates stories, and the story might be, we're never going to own anything. We are being used as cheap labor. They are making decisions that affect our future without even telling us. My spouse knows more than I do, and I'm supposed to just trust it. We are taking risks I did not agree to, and sometimes those stories are wrong. But if nobody talks about it and communicates, the stories become the truth inside the family unit. And here's an example. A successor is told, don't worry about it. Someday this will all be yours. I hate that line. You hear me talk about this many times in my podcast. Someday this will all be yours. But their spouse is looking at bills and sees everything that is coming due, whether it's the monthly utility bills, the health insurance, groceries, vehicle expenses. And they're trying to plan a life. And someday is not a financial plan. The spouse does not need to run the farm, but they do need to understand how it was being run. What are we working to build towards? What risks are we taking? What is the timeline? What income can we count on? What happens if the plan changes? So here's a script that I would use from the spouse to the successor. I do not need to know every farm detail, but I do need enough information to feel financially secure about our household and our future in the farming business. And here's a script that the successor to the parents could use. My spouse is affected by this plan too. We need enough transparency to make household decisions and protect our marriage. And here's a script that the senior generation could use. We want to respect business privacy, but we also understand that your spouse needs enough information to feel secure. Let's decide what should be shared and how often. So, this is not about inviting chaos, it's about building trust. The next card is called the middle messenger trap. How do we make sure no one gets stuck as the go between? And a back boost note would be direct talk reduces drama. This may be one of the biggest problems in family farms. The successor gets stuck in the middle. Mom and dad say something to the successor. The spouse says something to the successor. The siblings say something. The successor carries the message back and forth, and pretty soon they're not just farming. Now they become a translator, a referee, a counselor, a diplomat, an emotional shock absorber. That's exhausting and it's unfair. When families communicate through one person, the story changes each time it is told. Tone gets added, details get lost in translation, and resentment grows. The spouse may say, "Did you talk to your parents about that?" And the parents may say, "Did you tell your wife what we said?" The successor might say, "I just wish everyone would talk directly." And that is the point of this card. No one should be forced to carry every emotional message between households. So here's an example. A spouse is upset because family members keep walking into the house without calling. Instead of having a respectful conversation with the family, the spouse tells the successor. Then the successor tries to bring it up to mom and dad. Mom or dad feel attacked. Then they say, "Well, your wife must have a problem with us." Now the spouse feels blamed, and the successor is stuck in the middle. That is the middle messenger trap. So here's a script I would use as a successor. I do not want to be the go-between between everyone. We need to talk directly and respectfully instead of sending messages through me. I'm not the messenger. And the spouse script could be, I do not want to put you in the middle. I'm willing to have a respectful conversation as long as it can be respectful without yelling together with your parents. So this does not become frustration that keeps rolling and rolling. The senior generation. If something is bothering us, let's talk to the person respectfully instead of putting the successor in the middle. Having direct conversations reduces drama. This may feel awkward at first. It feels kind of mushy, but it is better than making one person carry the emotional weight for the entire family. The next card is respectful drop-ins. So the front prompt reads, what's our agreement about stopping by homes, shops, offices, or barns? And the back note or booster would be ask first is kind. So this card is going to hit home for a lot of farm families because on a farm, the lines between home and work are blurry. The house may be next to the shop. The office might be in the house. The yard may be shared. Grandma and grandpa may have lived there before. Family may feel like they have always been welcome, but when the next generation moves in, that house now becomes their home. And the home needs to feel like a home. That does not just mean anybody can stop in and visit. It does not mean family is not welcome. It does not mean we forget the family history. It means we ask first. Here's an example. The senior generation might think, it's no harm. I'm just stopping by. The younger generation living in the house, they experience it as, I can't relax. I have no privacy. I never know who is going to walk in. I might be in the bathroom. I feel like I'm living in someone else's house. This is especially hard if the house has always been known as Grandma and Grandpa's house. But if the successor's family is living there now, the identity of that space has to shift and change. It is no longer Grandma and Grandpa's house. It can still be a legacy home, but it also has to be their home. So here's a script I would use for the successor. We appreciate having family close and we want family to feel welcomed, but we also need privacy in our own home. Could we agree that to call or text before stopping in? And here's a script for the senior generation to use. I know this house has a lot of history for all of us, but I respect that it is your home now. I will call or text before stopping by. Here's a script when it feels awkward. This is not about shutting anybody out. It is about helping our household feel respected and settled. A simple boundary like call first can prevent years of resentment. So here's a story that I just have to take a side step on to share. So you've heard me talk about that the house that we live in, the girls are the fifth generation, and we've done a lot of remodeling and work to this 100-year-old house. And family that drives by, they're very excited to see that the house has come to life again and has been remodeled and worked. And they're so curious, they want to stop in to see. But the timing of their visits is not always good timing. Stopping in unannounced, not taking their shoes off, just walking in and then giving unsolicited advice does not always come easy to take. My husband and I often joke that we should call it the Olson Family Museum, and we should have been charging admission for a tour of the museum. All right, well, we're past that. There's so many stories to tell. So, all right. So the next card is credit where it's due. How will we acknowledge unpaid labor and invisible work like kids' meals, working on the books, emotional help? And a front or a back boost is invisible work is still work. So this card is important because so much of farm family life runs on invisible labor. Things happen and they're taking place, but nobody really sees what really goes on behind the scenes, behind the curtain. The meals that are made, the bookwork that's done, the parts runs, the cleaning, emotional support, working off the farm for health insurance, keeping the household steady during the summer busy seasons, hosting family gatherings, taking care of aging parents, managing all the schedules and helping during emergencies. And often the person doing that work is a spouse or an in-law. They may not be the ones in the tractor. They may not be at the sale barn. They may not be the ones writing the checks, but they're helping hold the whole system together. They might be the glue. And if that work is never recognized, resentment builds. So here's an example. A spouse works an off-farm job for years, so the farm household has stable income and or insurance. So everyone says the successor is sacrificing for the farm, but the spouse is sacrificing too. They may be carrying the steady paycheck. They may be handling kids alone during spring's work or harvest. They may be managing the house while the farm gets every hour and every ounce of their spouse's energy. That deserves a recognition. So here's a script I would use from the senior generation side. I want to acknowledge that your contribution may not always show up on the books, but it matters. Thank you for what you do for this family and this farm business operation. Here's a script for the successor to say, I could not do this without the support of my spouse and my children. We need to recognize that the farm affects both of us, not just the person doing the field work. And here's a script for the spouse to say, I'm not asking for constant praise or recognition, but I do need my contribution to be seen and respected. Recognition costs nothing, but the lack of it can cost a lot. All right, if you want to put this episode into action, here is your 30-minute homework challenge. I call this the in-law bridge check-in. Set a timer for 30 minutes. This works best with the successor and spouse first. Then you could decide what needs to be brought to the larger family conversation. So step 1, name what feels supportive. Take 5 minutes and each person answers, what helps me feel supported by the family and the farm? Write down the answers. Then take 10 minutes and name what feels heavy, unclear, intrusive, or unspoken right now. So this might be privacy. It might be schedules constantly being interrupted. It might be uncertainty about finances or money. It might be the unannounced drop-ins or not having any family time. It might be information access to everything that the family is doing, or being in the middle, or feeling judged, or feeling invisible. We're not pointing the fingers and blaming here. We're just naming it. And then step 3, pick one boundary, 10 minutes, choose one boundary that would reduce resentment immediately. An example of that would be call or text before entering the house. No business talk after 8 p.m. unless it's urgent. Protect one family event during the summer season. Have a monthly farm update so the spouse is not in the dark. Do not send messages through the successor. Acknowledge off-farm work and invisible labor. All right, step 4, create one sentence agreement, 5 minutes. Write, we agreed to blank because blank. So an example of that would be, we agree to call or text before coming into the house because your home needs to feel private and respected. Or we agree to have one monthly update conversation because our household and family needs clarification about what the farm business plan is. Then decide who needs to hear this, how will we say it respectfully, when will we revisit it. All right. Next time on the Pathfinder Legacy Podcast, we are going to continue with Deck 3, the in-law bridge, and we will go even deeper into the conversations around belonging, roles, traditions, conflict repair, and what it takes for a new family member to feel like they are part of the future, not just an outsider watching the farm from the mailbox. Because the in-law conversation is not just about boundaries, it's also about belonging. And when people feel like they belong, they are much more willing to help build the farming legacy. As we wrap up today, here's what I want you to remember. The in-law or successor spouse is not just married to the farm kid. They are affected by the farm. They are affected by the schedule. They are affected by the decisions. They are affected by the stress. They are affected by whether the transition plan is clear or constantly changing, constantly moving that target down the road. So if we want farm succession to work, we cannot ignore the household behind the successor. We have to protect the marriage. We have to respect the home. We have to define boundaries. We have to recognize invisible work. And we have to create a place where the new family member feels welcomed without being swallowed whole. If you want the in-law bridge check-in homework resource, go to my website at pathfinderlegacy.com. And if you're ready to purchase the Pathfinder Legacy Conversation Card Game, or you want help using it with your family or clients, reach out to me at pathfinderlegacy.com. You can call, email, or text me. At the end of the day, the legacy is not just the land, the house, the machinery, the cattle, the crops, or the business plan. It is the people inside the story. It is the marriage trying to survive the transition. It is the children watching how the generations treat each other. It is the home that needs to feel like a home. And it is the bridge we build so the next generation can carry the legacy forward without losing themselves in the process. Thanks for joining me on the Pathfinder Legacy Podcast. If this episode made you think about your own farm's future, consider sharing it with a family member or a friend who could use the help. Because sometimes the hardest conversations are the ones that matter the most. Until next time, I'll see you between the ditches.
Thanks for listening to the Pathfinder Legacy Podcast, where your future is our focus. Be sure to subscribe, follow us on social media, and visit us at pathfinderlegacy.com to start building your transition plan today.